Welcome, everybody. Can everybody see the screen? Just a quick thumbs up if you can. Great, fantastic. Welcome to everything you always wanted about flood insurance, but were afraid to ask. I'm one of your co-presenters. The other one is Edna Hernandez, who's our customer success manager. And we're thrilled to have you here today. Our entire focus of business is around you, the realtor, both as a consumer, because we know that you own your own property or properties, but also as an advisor to your clients through their buying and selling process. And we know that flood insurance is very kind of specific, complex, going through a lot of change right now. And we want to make sure that you are completely confident throughout the process that you're working on with your clients or for yourself, so that you can understand how to approach the conversation regarding flood insurance. And our goals are to help you be the most knowledgeable, confident, and profitable realtor in your market, understand FEMA's new changes that are ongoing right now. And we're right in the midst of some important dates, April 1st coming up regarding renewals. We'll talk a lot about that today. As well as, one of the goals today is to be interactive. And so to that point, we have a few questions up front that we like to ask when we do trainings. The first, and feel free to use the chat function. Edna will be managing that as I present today, and then we'll have open Q&A at the end. But have you tried our CartoFront application? We've been live in your market since just after October 1st. I think it was October 4th that we launched in Maine. And so just type in a quick yes or no, that would be helpful. And as we go today, there are other questions that we really want to hear from you. What information do you need to advise your clients? Or questions that you might have as a property owner yourself. When you share a quote with your client, what questions or objections do you hear most often? And what further can we do to help you? Make sure that you have everything that you need. So this everything you always want to know about flood insurance, but afraid to ask, this kind of book, we also have as an ebook, and we'll share that today, as well as we'll have a follow-up email with all the resources. But we have 4 chapters that we go through, actually technically 3 chapters, flood today and do a demonstration, talk about flood insurance 101, and then we point you to some resources that are available. And then at the end, we'll do Q&A. So this is really becoming a more and more of a daily conversation for everybody, both in real estate and insurance, right? Which is, there's a lot of risk for property as it regards to catastrophe. Our focus is on flood. In other parts of the country, it's other catastrophic perils that are of concern, fires, earthquakes, etc. This map is independent research that was done now almost 2 years ago that overlaid FEMA's maps, which are in white, with other independent research done by scientists from around the world to look at hidden risk of flood. And the darker the colors, the more of hidden risk. And when we look specifically in the Maine Listings area, and we calculate out kind of the differences between FEMA's maps and this independent research that looks at future casting, nearly 50,000 properties are at greater risk across the state. And we just picked on York County being, one of the probably the most populous or second most populous. And you can see that a big difference between the independent research on the right and the FEMA numbers, almost double. When you look at weather patterns, and right now we're finalizing or finishing winter 2022, the projection going into it was going to be pretty wet throughout the Midwest and the Northwest. And that it would be pretty seasonal and kind of straight down the middle for the state of Maine. But as we know, these things can change. And, we still have a part of the winter to go, and then we have the wet spring season. We're going to spend a lot of our time talking about Risk Rating 2.0. It went into effect on October 1st of last year with all new policies being quoted with the new risk rating pricing model. With that now comes each state has a state-by-state projection and what this could mean. In the state of Maine broadly, 2/3 of all policies will see an increase in their pricing, with about 1/3 coming down. At the moment, there's less than 8,000 policies in force, yet there's about 600 properties in the state of Maine that FEMA believes could have insurance on them between low and medium to high risk. So what is Risk Rating 2.0? So officially what it is a new pricing model. And what the biggest difference is that the government now is pricing each individual property based on characteristics such as elevation, distance to water, replacement cost. This is the most substantial change they've had in their entire history of over 50 years. In the old days, everything was dependent on what flood zone you were on and what the elevation certificate was. So if you were on a flood zone, you got a certain demarcation and you'd have a price. For those that were on flood zone X, it was a very standard $599 policy all throughout the country, didn't matter. Now, again, everything's priced based on the individual property. The government is modernizing their program to meet the standards that private insurers have been using for flood insurance for decades. So as they go through this change, FEMA themselves have predicted that about 3/4 of all rates will go up across the country. And we are seeing that as we quote each and every day on our platform. Now, they have for any property seeing an increase, they've put a cap at a maximum rate of $12,125 for that insurance policy. Yet they have some consistencies that they're bringing forward from their old program. First off, and probably the most important, is that if you're on a flood zone and you are going to finance your property for you or for your client, you absolutely need flood insurance. That is going to continue to be the same no matter what throughout the country. So flood zones AE, AH, VE, all will require flood insurance. Another important factor that they brought forward is if there's a current FEMA policy in place, that can be assumed or transferred to the new buyer upon the purchase. So important pieces to remember on that. April 1st now starts the second part of the implementation of Risk Rating 2.0. And this is when all renewal notices will go out for existing FEMA policies. And again, over 75% of the entire country. In your market at 66%, we'll see increases in pricing. And we're going to see repriced policies based on the new characteristics, right? Each individual property will be reassessed based on its characteristics with the Risk Rating 2.0. Now, the government is going to cap the increase in each individual year at 18%, but then they will continue to escalate the pricing of that repriced insurance until they match on par with the price risk. So the example would be if you had a standard $600 policy and it got repriced at $1,000, you would see a cap of 18% each year. So the first year would be about $690, and then you would escalate, $90 to $100 each year until it got to that $1,000 price in 4 or 5 years. So that's how the government's doing on existing renewals, right? So they're putting a cap in there, which is beneficial to the existing policyholder. As it relates to community rating system, many communities in the state of Maine are part of this, and their discounts of 5 to 45% will still apply broadly to that community, and properties within that community that will all be figured into the calculations. Last but not least, and probably the most confusing thing as part of this is because the elevation now is a data point within the risk rating pricing model, right? It's one of the key characteristics. The need for elevation certificates by the government is getting a reduced role. right? It's being de-emphasized because they have that data baked into the pricing. Now, that said, elevation certificates still may be used to bring down the cost of flood insurance, or if you're going to contest the insurance pricing that you're getting. And so it's important to know that, but they're becoming optional as we go forward here. Just a real quick note here, flood zones are X zone means low to medium risk. So when you get an X zone on one of our quotes, it's not required, yet research is recommended. And we're going to talk a lot about that today because we're seeing some disparity in the X zones in the pricing, which is concerning. AE, AH, VE are all known FEMA flood zones. And with that, you need flood insurance for the mortgage. Just really quickly, since October 1st, we have seen about 6,500 quotes on our platform in our 4 markets. The 4 markets are the state of Maine, Boise, Idaho, Miami, Florida, and now as of last week, we went into Fort Myers, Florida, in that area. And we're seeing 3 emerging types of flood quotes that I wanted to share with you. And we've written an article on this that Edna is going to make available in the follow-up. The first is the flood zone itself. So again, as we've talked, standard operating procedure here. If you're on a flood zone, you need insurance. So the question becomes really the best price and the best coverage for what you or your client needs. And we're seeing pretty consistent rates throughout, both the private side, which is National General Insurance, which is owned by Allstate, and then FEMA, right? And again, FEMA is going to be the same price no matter who you go to. The private is going to be variable based on the private's approach to their own risking model. So in this example here, on the private side, it's about $600 more than the government side. But that said, the private side may offer greater coverage for the same base information, same base price of $250,000 for the building, $100,000 for the contents. There might be slight savings if you play with the deductible a little bit, but generally plus or minus about $30 or $40 per month here, and that's about standard. What we're seeing, we're comfortable with that, and again, it's a known flood zone. The second would be an X zone, right? And we're calling these peace of mind, and for this there's some risk as pointed out here. But this is peace of mind for your client to make sure that they have coverage in the event of a catastrophe, right? So for under $1,000 in this regard, or even better pricing, because we're seeing that in a lot of the properties in Maine on X zones, maybe even down to, $400, $450, $500 a year. You get peace of mind, and it's nice in the event of a catastrophe. So those are ones that we're advising is good, just to have coverage and make sure that your greatest assets covered. Now, the ones that are concerning us the most are what we're calling the double take. These are known X zones, but either the government or the private side is seeing risk and pricing it as such. So one of the sides is seeing risk and the other isn't. So these are ones that we're advising that you do a double take. Again, the old system was everybody had a standard $599 government policy. It was straight up. Now, in this regard, the government's pricing this one at $1,500. The private side's $500. And that's a big difference. It's like $80 a month. And that's like, something's going on here. Someone's seeing risk to the property, someone's not. So we're saying do a double take, do the double work, ask for a quote, and lean in and understand what's going on here. Because 2 things. One is someone's seeing the risk and you want to understand why they're seeing the risk. Secondly, if they're going to bind insurance, they're going to get a pretty good price with one of the sides because they're going to offer it at what a traditional X zone is, but protecting in the event of a catastrophe. So let me pause here. I'm going to switch screens. I'm going to do a demo. If questions are coming to mind, please put them into the chat function and we'll go from there. All right, so we're in Flex MLS. Here is a really nice looking property built in 1989. To take a quote from us, you go into where it says more and you pick on our little icon here and our name CartoFront and you click. And at that point, we take the data and we clean the data and we send it off, and we get quotes back pretty instantaneously. And this property now is loading up, and you see a picture of the property itself. You see the listing price, the address, and then right off the bat, you know what flood zone it's on. And so we've done this as a nice feature for you. Right off the bat, you know it's a flood zone X, which again is low to medium risk. You do not need to get flood insurance unless you feel like it's important for your client. And so now underneath that, we're going to look at the pricing. And this would be a peace of mind quote, right? So you're seeing quotes all less than $500. Actually, the private market here is $400 for some really good coverage for the base building. So for peace of mind, less than $400 or $33 a month, your client can get nice insurance. Now, at any point, if you want to reach out to the insurance agent to ask a question, we've made that available to you. Erica Ostrander is able to help. You fill in the information and she'll get back to you. Separately, if you want to send this quote off to your client, you can either download a PDF. It's a nice form, great for going on a tour or an open house. My system's loading here. Sorry about that. It's taking a moment. There it is. Make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. Here's what it looks like in the form. Right, side-by-side comparison, the coverages are available. We'll actually drop your name right in here so you can present it to your client, and then the information on how to contact We Insure and our disclaimer. These are all estimated quotes, right, directional quotes, and they need further information to bind. You can also click a link, get a link that you can drop into an email or a text and send to your client. Or if you want to, you can send them a direct email. I'll send one to myself here at CartoFront. You can customize this. And then off you send it. And then on the back side, I'll go into my email. And here's how the quotes come in for your clients. The system's powered by us, CartoFront. We introduced the insurance company because it's an insurance quote. And then you see the information all nicely presented here, one by one. Your client can then contact the insurance agent, or they can come right back into the quote, take a look at it through this private link. It's the same function as that link that I shared with you before. Last feature to show you is we're completely bilingual. And so if you have Spanish-speaking clients, if you want to click to Spanish, the entire system turns to Spanish, including the follow-up information that you send. Okay, great. Let's move on to training part here as it relates to information. Okay, so there is a definition for flood. It's meant to be able to help for insurance. A flood is defined as an excess of water on land that is normally dry, affecting 2 or more acres of land or 2 or more properties. So if you leave the sprinkler on in your backyard and you flood yourself, that's not a flood. It's got to affect multiple properties. And floods can be caused by storms, hurricanes, snow, and water backup from inadequate drainage systems, dams, and levees. And we're seeing that a lot. In fact, the state of Michigan had a huge flood. I think it was 2 summers ago, maybe it was 3 summers ago, when a levee broke outside Midland, Michigan. With aging infrastructure, more building, crowding, we're seeing a lot more risk due to just our systems breaking down. What is not a flood? A flood is not considered to be covered as a result of an internal pipe break, a hole in the roof, or broken windows. So interior to the house, that would be covered by your homeowners. So what is flood insurance? Flood insurance is specifically protecting your property in the event of a flood or flood-related disaster. Here's the most common misconception. Flood insurance is its own separate policy. It's not included in homeowners. So it's important to note that it must be bound by a professional insurance agent qualified, right? and it's its own separate policy. Really important to understand that. So there's the government FEMA, right? The National Flood Insurance Program, which is standard, one size fits all. We'll talk a little bit about their coverages in a moment. And then there's a growing private market that's coming out due to all the risk that is out there and the opportunity to create great products. We happen to have Beyond Floods on our platform, so we offer both a quote from the government and then 2 quotes, as you saw, from private. And then, Beyond Floods is one of many carriers that are out there. Erica has access to over 150 carriers. So if you want to shop a little bit with her, she'd be more than happy to do that. Beyond Floods is underwritten by National General Insurance. It's now a subsidiary of Allstate, and it's rated A- by AM Best and Company. It's a very qualified insurance. If it was a car, we would call it like a Toyota brand. It's very dependable. It's got very good options. It is, of great value. It is not the cheapest out there on the market, but it's of great value. So we want to just let you know that. When you're going for a quote in our platform, we'll be able to provide quotes for single family homes, townhomes, condos, mobile homes. We are not able to offer quick quotes for land, build-to-suits, or commercial. Now, that said, all you have to do is fill out the form and ask Erica to do it. She will do it for you by doing it manually as opposed to a quick quote. So let's talk a little bit about the coverages and the differences. So if you take insurance out from FEMA, the government's actually the direct supplier of the insurance, right? So they work through these write your own insurance companies like State Farm, Allstate, others, who's the conduit for the government's program. But you're actually taking the government program, they're backing it. When you go to the private market, Beyond Floods or Neptune or others, Aon, those companies are standing behind their product. You're actually taking the insurance directly with them. The flood risk and pricing system now is on par because of risk rating 2.0. Everybody across the board, the government and the private now are quoting based on the individual property itself and its characteristics, right? So that system now is consistent, and it's really a good thing, even though it's costing more money overall. It's now that properties are being priced by their own risk individually. The government is getting, kind of moving towards modernization slow by slow, but it's really important that they do that so that everybody's on the same footing. Now, what is big and different is the limits. So I mentioned this earlier. The government has a one-size-fits-all model. So coast to coast, their coverages are $250 for the building and $100 for the personal property, and that their deductibles are $1,250 for each of them per the separate policies that are taken out. So you can expect $2,500 in deductible, that's standard, but taken at $1,250. They have very limited options with the government regarding additional coverages for the flood insurance. On the private side, whether it's Beyond Floods or others, much greater latitude. So with Beyond Floods, they can do insurance all the way up to 1.5 million in replacement costs, right? So that's really good to know. A lot of your properties on the water, beautiful properties have pricing that are greater than the limit of 250, 100, and need to be all the way taken up to, $1.5 million or so. So that's important to know. Beyond Floods gives much more flexibility there. The way they price the building contents is they take the building coverage and they take it at 50%, and that's what the personal property would be. So in the example of if you took $1 million of flood insurance, 500,000 would be the building, the contents coverage, personal. The deductible is all inclusive, and it ranges from $1,000 to $10,000, and that's a great way to buy down the cost of the insurance by having a higher deductible. And then Beyond Floods and other privates have a lot more flexibility as it relates to things like loss of use coverage or other buildings that might be on the property. The timing for the waiting period is also significantly different. So the government has a 30-day waiting period, which is kind of their old standard, and they've kept that in place even with changes to risk rating 2.0. Beyond Floods has a 5-day waiting period, so it's much quicker to get from quote to bind there. Regardless, on both sides, if coverage is required by a lender, say because you have a closing, they can waive all of these time waiting periods and just get right to a bind. Now, historically, it was always best to look at the government for the highest risk properties. It still is advisable to look at that, but again, because of risk rating 2.0, they're leveling the playing field, especially for the things that are in that low to medium risk. It's really, really interesting to see how the pricing is right now. Regardless, we're just saying take a free quote, right? It doesn't cost anything. It's a free service within your MLS. Comparison shop, take a look at all of this. And it's really important that you understand what your options are, both from the government and on the private side. Now, what does flood insurance cover? So for the building, it's the physical structure and its foundation, things that are permanent to the building, the electrical and plumbing systems, things like central air, the equipment, et cetera, all things that are permanent. What is needs to be researched further is things like detached garages, other buildings on the property. This is where you need to go from our quick quotes to get something bindable. Ask these questions on behalf of your clients or have them ask themselves. Debris removal is also covered in flood insurance. On the content side, it's all the personal belongings, clothing, furniture, electronics, anything that can be taken out of the house or the property are covered under flood insurance this way. Now, what is not covered is really important too. So pre-existing damage, things like moisture, mildew, mold, not caused by the flood, that's not covered. Things like currency, precious metals, valuable papers, if that's washed away in a storm, ruined, that's not covered. Property and belongings outside of an insured building, right? We just talked a little bit about this. Things like trees, plants, wells, septic tanks, walks, decks, fences, hot tubs, swimming pools. Those are not normally covered. You can get covered if you ask for a rider, but again, you've got to ask for these things. But under standard policies, those things are not covered. It's really just the building and the contents of the house. Loss of use by business interruption, things like that are not covered. And landscape or exterior features are not covered normally. So again, these are things that your client or you need to dig into and understand what's covered and what's not, and choose the coverage that's right for you. Now, in the event of an insurance claim, wanted to let you know about a couple of key information criteria. So if there is a claim, what's replacement cost? So replacement cost value is the cost to repair or replace an insured property. So this is for your primary residence or your client's primary residence. If the property is ruined or taken down, they would get the replacement cost value of the property. Now, what's actual cash value? That's really used for investment properties, right? So in the way that's worked is actual cash value is the replacement cost minus depreciation for wear and tear on those items. So let's say there's an investment property. They invested $10,000 for the first floor living room. There's damage to that living room 5 years after that investment was made, and it's deemed that the deductible the replacement cost is at 50%. So instead of getting $10,000, which was the original outlay, they would get $5,000, which is the actual cash value of the property, the depreciation of the replacement cost for those items. We have some flood resources that are available to you. First and foremost, there's a landing page within Flex MLS that you can get to. Has all the information that we just covered and more. Edna will send you the link for that as we come out of this call today. We'll also send you the ebook, both in English and Spanish. It's about 8 digital pages. It's basically a shortened version of what we've gone through here today. Great resource. You can send that link along to your client very easily. Within all of this are links to important information. The Maine state report and the FEMA stuff is really important to take a look at if you so choose. Really detailed information. We'll also send to you the ArcGIS mapping stuff. You can look up your zip code. Really important to see how FEMA views the changes in rates and what you can expect within your own zip code. Great follow-up item for coming out of today. If you have any questions regarding the technology or educational support, info@cartofront.com is a handy resource. Drop us a note, we'll get right back to you. And if it's regarding insurance, Erica is available to you at We Insure. And with that, I'll stop the full presentation. I'll turn it over to Edna to manage the Q&A, and we'll go from there. Looking forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you, Jason. I don't see any questions in the chat. So if you guys want to write anything on there or even take yourself off mute, feel free to do so.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
I normally have a insurance company run flood certs for me on every property. This CartoFront, when I go into the MLS app portion of this, when it tells you the flood zone, is there a way to actually print that flood cert, or does it just show you that particular zone?
Yes, so we just offer a directional flood zone determination, right? That doesn't come with a certification. So we're just doing it as an educational piece to show what our detail is reporting. If you need flood certs, we would say go to My Flood Status, who I think also is on the platform, who's a really good resource for the realtors and the homeowners and home buyers. My Flood Status can do detailed reports. That there is an investment, it's $30, but if you're challenged by the insurance rates or want to validate the flood zone determination, it's money well invested. myfloodstatus.com.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, thoughts?
I just received a question if you could share the page where you have the resources, but just to let everyone know, I will be emailing all of those resources to the email that you registered for this class. So if there's any other email you'd like to have receive them to, please let me know in the chat.
Are there things that we can be doing for you as realtors that would be of great help that we're not doing currently? Okay. Are there things that your clients are saying about the FEMA changes? How's that going? Questions that you have? Kirk, you're shaking your head now. You're on mute. Is it coming up in conversations? Are they aware, not aware, concerned? Okay.
Jason, I just received a question that if this service is available nationwide, and just to make sure, I think this was from Linda. Do you mean like the platform? Just so that we answer your question fully.
So
I mean the insurance, if the insurance is available nationwide.
So yeah, flood insurance is available nationwide. The government offers it across the entire country, right? And private markets are available throughout the whole country. You may not always get beyond floods in every market, but you would get some private option nationwide. As far as CartoFront is concerned, we will be expanding to a nationwide opportunity around April 1st through getaquote.com and floodquote.com. We'll be powering those two systems, and we'll be able to provide quotes across the country. We're going to start in Florida and then expand from there. Okay. Last chance for questions, thoughts, and we'll give back some time if no questions. Well, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And thank you for the support, the ongoing support in the state of Maine. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.